Thank you. I like getting the standing ovation at the beginning of the speech. Takes kind of the pressure off. Thank you, Rekha, for that introduction. A couple of things right off the bat. I know that the theme of this conference, and I've been coming to a lot of them over the years, is making monumental strides. So last year, Sri didn't make it to the Supreme Court. I got fired, but I'm really glad everyone else is doing great. Yeah, look, Amul, I hope you enjoy the Sixth Circuit. Good luck with that. I'm looking forward to the envelopes, especially since I waived for you guys, because I love you, my typical $400,000 speaking fee. So I have been coming to these events for so long that I knew this when it was SABA. Oh, you all remember too. And now it's SABA, which I'm told stands for South Asian Bar Association, but in my case could also stand for, given the lovely award that I'm getting this evening, sorry about being axed. So it is, you don't have to be that sorry. I'm doing fine. So I have been more liberated since I don't have the constraints of being the chief law enforcement officer in Manhattan anymore on the federal side. I have been liberated on Twitter. Some of you have been very nice to mention my Twitter feed. So my number one follower on Twitter is my dad, because he's very into metrics. So he likes to see how many followers I have. I think I'm up to 348,000. So if everyone here who's not following me does, and you tell all your friends to follow me, my dad will be very happy. Because at the moment, it's not clear if he's disappointed or not. So it is also true that I get to do other fun things that I wasn't able to do before, including appearing on The Daily Show. It was a lot of fun to do the piece with Hassan Minhaj. It was a lot of fun. I'm basically figuring out all the ways, now that I don't have that job, to debase myself in ways that make my kids think I'm really cool. And the premise, if you haven't seen it, of the comedy of the interview with Hassan was basically that I'm a loser and I have no job. And he, at one point, had his parents on his laptop, where he was saying to them, he made me read these cue cards on the show, where he said, look, my parents wanted me to go to law school, and I wanted to explain to them how excited I was when you got fired. To explain to them, so you become an attorney and you study hard, and then you get fired by the president. And he asked me, he made me say, what it felt like to eat expired yogurt out of a dumpster. And I wanted to explain, my mom never made raita that way. Usually she put it on a plate, but that's comedy. So I do have a job. I have multiple jobs, so you don't need to worry about me. I'm a distinguished scholar in residence at NYU, which is a very fancy title. Thank you for NYU. I sold a book, which I haven't written yet, but I sold a book to Kanaf about justice for a decent amount of coin. You'll appreciate this. When I told my daughter that I had sold a book to Kanaf and told her how much I was getting for it, rather than be happy for me, she said, why on earth would they pay you money for a book you haven't written yet? I said, that's what it's, I'm an executive vice president now with my brother's media startup, Some Spider Studios. You may ask yourself why, and it's because I love my brother. He's one of the greatest business people I know. If you've been following my career and my discussions about my brother for a long time, you'll appreciate and maybe remember that I used to joke that my brother did this weird thing on the internet in e-commerce while I became the United States Attorney with subpoena power and a lot of authority, and he went from being overnight, having been a Columbia Law School graduate, from being a Wall Street lawyer to selling diapers on the internet under the slogan, "We're number one in number two." But he sold his company, and I think many of you know this, for $545 million to Amazon, and then I'm out of a job. And I figure, when it's like when you break up, you want to make sure you have a stable relationship next. So I think working with my brother gives me some measure of job security. So I'm doing that. I'm going to host a podcast, because apparently everyone now is required to have a podcast. So you should tune in when I start that. And I'm trying to think of other ways to express my voice, because I haven't lost that. I haven't lost my law license. And so I'm going to have, I think, a lot of fun doing all those other things. And as you can tell, I'm doing everything possible to avoid being in a position where I have to bill in 6-minute increments. Meanwhile, when you have a lapse in employment and you can contemplate doing new things, that's the moment when your father hypothetically may call you and say something like, it's not too late. Just think about it. You could take the MCAT. You have time. So I really need those envelopes. I have a very long history with this organization. It's an amazing thing to be with you. And just, I was thinking about the other times I have been here, and it occurs to me that invitations and awards from this organization actually mark every step in what lately has seemed to me to be the ironic circle of my professional career. Even though the prior speaker didn't remember, I spoke at the 2007 conference also, and I was given an award, and I spoke, I think, literally 10 years and 10 days ago at the SABA conference in San Francisco at lunch. And I was given a very lovely award, the Lawyer of the Year award. And why was I given that award? It was for the work I had been doing on the Senate Judiciary Committee when I was chief counsel to Senator Schumer. And what was that award for? The award was for the investigation that we were doing into the firing of U.S. attorneys. That's funny, right? Then I became U.S. Attorney in 2009, largely on the strength of that award from you guys. And I came to the conference and spoke again. And then I was asked to speak a third time in 2013. And by the way, when I spoke in 2007, I talked a bit about what has now become, I think, better known, the hospital incident where Jim Comey, who was then the Deputy Attorney General, went to the bedside of John Ashcroft to prevent people from the White House, including Alberto Gonzales, from overruling his decision about whether or not a terrorist surveillance program should be certified. So then in 2013, I spoke. It was literally days after Jim Comey had been nominated to be the FBI director, and I noted how interesting is that. I talked about him in 2007. Now he's nominated to be the U.S. attorney. At the time, I said, you know what we call that? We call that karma. And so now here we are. Comey's been fired, I've been fired, and the one constant in my life, it seems, in recent times, no matter what my job situation is that I'm welcomed by the South Asian Bar Association. God knows what's going to be happening the next time you guys ask me to come speak. So I'm really honored about the award. I accept it not for myself, but on behalf of all the men and women who I worked with over the years. At any given time, there are about 450 people in my office, men and women who care more about justice than any other people that I know. They did the work. I got to collect awards because I was the head of the office. And not a day goes by when I don't think about how much I miss working with, I think, the best people that exist on earth. And from time to time, people ask me, what is it you're most proud of when you had the job? And while I had the job. And I think they're expecting me to name a particular case. Was it Rikers Island? Was it the terrorism cases? Was it some of the Wall Street cases? Was it standing up for some civil rights of people who had been underdogs and had no one to fight for them? And I'm proud of a lot of those things, but my answer would always be, and remains, now that I had some time to reflect, having left the job, cases come and go. You win cases, you lose cases. We just lost on appeal a very significant case that was a part of my tenure against the Speaker of the New York State Assembly. And U.S. attorneys come and go. But the important thing to me, and the thing that I said I hope to accomplish and would feel most proud of, is if I was true to the values and the integrity embodied by the institution that I was asked to lead. An institution, the Southern District of New York, which began in 1789 at the founding of our republic. And the hope was that I would conduct myself in a way that the institution was as good as it was when I started and left in as good a position as when I started, and is in good standing as when I started. Because what you do in many ways, it's advice to some folks, is not really as important as how you do what you do. And a court victory is great, but if you don't do it the right way, and you don't do it with integrity, I don't think it means that much. And so the thing that I always aspired to was to make sure that I continued the legacy of what I thought my office was about, which is to do things with fairness and with justice, in the right way, for the right reasons, all the time. And so I'm proud of what we accomplished as a team in the Southern District of New York over the 7.5 years that I was there, of what we accomplished together. And that's up to and including the very end, when I refused to return the president's phone call. That was bizarre, and refused to resign. Just a quick note about my final day. So the president calls on a Thursday, March 9th, which is totally weird for various reasons that I won't go into, but if you want to know what I think about it, you can read a New York Times article from a couple of months ago. And I didn't return the call. 22 hours later, I was asked for my resignation by the acting Deputy Attorney General. And when I got the call, it came sort of out of the blue, and he said, everyone has been asked to submit their letter of resignation. And I said, and I wasn't trying to be defiant then, I said, are you sure about that? Because I did this whole thing with Trump at the tower. Jared Kushner was there. President Bannon was there. And so I thought I was cool with Trump. So maybe you didn't get the memo, like, I'm good. You're talking about the other fools who've got to go. And literally the answer came back, I'll check. And this is all true, by the way. And so I didn't want to sort of resign from the job that I loved accidentally, because Stephen Miller forgot that I had that thing. And so I was holed up in my office from about 2:30 p.m. on that Friday, March 10th on, and I didn't leave my office. I didn't know what was happening. And literally the press was calling the White House. And by the way, the president has absolute authority to fire anyone he wants. I just wanted to make sure I was being fired because I'm a trained lawyer who may now teach unemployment law at NYU. And it became increasingly likely that I was actually being fired. And so, but the point is, I was in my office at 3 or 4 p.m., but I wasn't sure what was happening on a Friday. And I'd been the U.S. attorney for 7.5 years, and I became increasingly emotional and upset and sad. A, because obviously I didn't want to be leaving the job that I loved so much. But the reason I was upset is that I didn't want to be leaving the people who I love so much. And in particular, I was worried that I wouldn't understand that I was actually being fired until later that evening or the next day. And the reason I became increasingly emotional with my deputy, June, and my chief counsel, Joan Loughnane, were in my office, was that I wasn't going to have the opportunity to say goodbye to all these people who I cared about and who I'd worked with for so many years. I became increasingly upset and distraught about that because I thought I'll be fired over the weekend at some point and then I'm done and I won't be able to say the proper farewell to my colleagues. Until June and Joan said, Preet, if you end up getting fired, we'll let you back in the building on Monday. And I said, you will? And then, I know it sounds weird, but I became much happier. Obviously sad to leave, but I think it's important to acknowledge the people you work with who made you what you are. And the reason I have any success, the only reason you're giving me this award is because of the work that all those people did. And the idea, briefly for a couple of hours, that I would just be sort of leaving without saying goodbye to them was deeply upsetting to me. And the point of that, and the relevance of that to you folks, is that they were my feelings were a measure of not only the work, which I thought was profoundly important, but the people. I said when I left, there have been better U.S. attorneys, there have been smarter U.S. attorneys, there have been whiter U.S. attorneys. There have been more accomplished U.S., but no one, there was never anyone in that place who loved it any more than I did. And so that's important, to love a place. And people malign the legal profession, and it's a difficult profession in many ways. But my advice to you would be, find a way to do what you love, do it with people you love, and do it with love. That's the best way, I think, to live a professional life. And I got to do that longer than I had any right to expect or hope. Kid from Jersey, born in Punjab, dad who came from nothing. And that's why I have no remorse, regret, bitterness. I feel like I'm the luckiest lawyer who ever lived. And I fear, and I've said this before, given where I came from and where my family came from and what this country has done, I fear that I will not have enough breaths in my body to give back what I feel I owe this country. And I hope you feel the same way. Because this is, I think, a time for service, unlike any we've seen in a long while. There is no doubt that this is a profoundly important time. So find a way to serve, either in your private capacity, pro bono, or in some public service. This is a time when the law matters. Lawyers matter. Lawyers of color matter. More than any time I can think of in recent memory. So figure out what you can do with your law degree that helps other people. There's been a long discussion all evening about service. I believe in that deeply. I'm going to try to find ways to serve myself now that I'm out of my prior position. And it's the final word to SABA. It is exceptionally special to me to get this award from this community. that has been so good to me, and not everyone has been. And I couldn't imagine, I had a conference out in the West Coast that I was supposed to be at until Sunday, and I said immediately that I would fly back when I was asked to accept this award, because there's no place I would rather be than among, this community, my community, a lawyer's community who cares so much about diversity, service, and has been so supportive of me. I really love all of you, and I thank you for this honor.